the gratitude economy. To me, it seems like second nature, right? You grow up in a small town doing business with friends, family, teachers, neighbors. You have to do good business or you're not going to have a good reputation and you wouldn't make it. You paying me for a product and me delivering a good quality product, all of that is an energy exchange. And so it's important to have a good energy about you. And that's something that's come in the last 10 or 15 years, more so than the past. In relationship, I mean, that's a huge part of human nature, right? Community, relationships. So I think we have lost that sense of community in a lot of ways. They talk about social media and things like that and how we have all these friends, but we don't actually have close relationships. I think that it has trended this way and it's sort of reached its peak. And I think it's going to start trending back the old school direction.
Hello and welcome to the Conspiracy of Goodness podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Linda Ulrich, and I'm also the founder of the Goodness Exchange, which is a giant global website built all around sharing what's right with the world. We've written thousands of articles about innovators and thought leaders, folks who are changing the world in ways that we aren't even hearing about. They should be on the news. We're not hearing enough about them. So at the Goodness Exchange and here on this podcast, we are celebrating folks who are changing our shared future. And we're going to get started with one of those people right now. Corinne Thompson. Corinne's family owns a business in Pendleton, Oregon called Thompson's RV. And this has been an RV dealership, a dealership of some kind for so many decades. She's going to tell us all about that story. But I recently traveled 6,374 miles to do business with Thompson's RV. And we made that drive because these folks are part of something I'm calling the gratitude economy. The gratitude economy is this way that we're all looking to do business with people we trust and people who feel like a trusted advisor in our life. And it's kind of a two-way street, but the gratitude economy, if I had to describe it, is kind of like that hairdresser that you'll drive all the way across town for and pay twice as much. The gratitude economy is that dentist that you just would go to and you wouldn't let anybody else in the world touch you. The gratitude economy is that car dealership, like we have here in Swanton, Vermont, where they've been in business since almost the Model T days. It seems like there's still some paraphernalia around the showroom exactly from those days. And they do such good business that we'll never, ever buy a car anywhere else. And that is the gratitude economy. And I think we're all looking to do business with financial advisors, insurance salesmen, clothiers, you name it. We are looking for people who will fill that role in our life of doing good business and feeling like we're connecting and having a relationship at the same time. So, Corinne Thompson, welcome to the Conspiracy of Goodness podcast.
Thank you so much. Oh my gosh. Just hearing your intro, I feel flattered that I'm a part of this.
Well, I got to tell you, I have been, as I said in the introduction, really looking for someone to interview on this topic of the gratitude economy. I do a lot of public speaking about it because, of course, small businesses in this world can't compete with the big boys on flashy advertising and all that energy in social media that's expensive and may or may not work. And so the gratitude economy is where it's at. If you're a small to medium-sized business, I really feel like it's a place we can all celebrate that's coming along. And I will say, too, just to get people started on this subject, the opposite of the gratitude economy, I call the attention economy. That's what we've been in for 100 years. Since the advent of newspapers and radio, advertising is all about just grabbing and holding our attention. Right. It's about interruption. It's about clickbait and a little bit of tomfoolery about hot deals. All that stuff is the attention economy. And I think that's in our rearview mirror. I'm watching my patients and the choices they're making. I see 20 to 30 people a day. People are looking for the trusted advisors in their lives. And my husband and I felt like it was worth driving that far to do business with you guys.
Yeah, that's a great, it's nice to hear that is going by the wayside, because there was definitely probably a 10 or 15 year increment in time where when the internet first came out, right? The Amazons, all of that. And we saw all of our small town bookstores go out of business. and all of those things because they felt like they couldn't compete in that type of an economy. And I remember at that point thinking, okay, you can either move with the times or choose to just close up shop, right? But there was also something about how do you get that message out there that you're a good human, that you do good business when it is so flashy, and that's not who you are.
Okay.
So it's nice to hear that it is going to go by the wayside.
Yeah. You just look at what your friends are doing and who they're doing business with and how you do business, don't you? Like I was just looking for a guy to build me a new septic system on the family farm in Illinois. I was talking to somebody else I trusted who I do business with back there in Illinois on that farm. And, I'll probably take their word as gospel and just do business with the person they tell me. I probably won't even get any bids, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's kind of what happened.
It's a small town thing.
Yes, it's a small town thing.
It's a small town thing. Mm-hmm.
We should probably say too, you're in Pendleton, Oregon, which is the place where the famous Pendleton shirts came from.
Pendleton shirts, Pendleton whiskey, and the Pendleton Roundup. Yeah.
And it is a lovely, charming town in very rural Eastern Oregon. So let's start there. Give us a little bit of the backstory of your family's business, and then we're going to talk about how you've weathered all these transitions, because your family's been in business for decades, right?
Yeah, since 1953. A long time.
Crazy. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so tell us the origin story.
Okay, so my grandpa started a Nash Rambler car dealership with his brother. Yeah, so that was the original dealership. I think their partnership only lasted a couple of years. I guess it would have been my great uncle. He chose to go sell real estate. So then just my grandpa was selling cars. My grandpa was big into camping. So they also had old truck campers. I mean, they were new then. To us, the old vintage truck campers. They sold Aloha travel trailers, which were built here in Oregon. So they sort of transitioned a little bit into trailers, but mainly did cars. So Nash Ramblers, then Datsun, when my dad was more of a teenager. But my grandpa struggled with health. So he had a heart attack and ended up selling his new dealership. My dad, at that point, was about 16, 17 years old and started helping my grandpa once he decided to sell all of his used cars. Then my dad purchased all of the used cars and started his own car lot. So started off as a used car salesman, which, that term gets such a negative connotation, but my dad was an extremely good human. And so he started off with a really great business, and my mom met him very shortly thereafter. And she had previously worked at an auto dealership up in Wenatchee, Washington. So she kind of already had an idea of car sales. And she currently was working at US Bank. So she was a banker. So she kind of has that book work. That's why she still to this day does all of the books and that sort of thing. So they made a pretty perfect couple. They got married after 2 months of knowing each other, which blows my mind. Yeah. Well, and then, so then they had a used car lot for a while and then transitioned to trailers that were built in Oregon. So we've always had trailer manufacturers that were built local. So back then it was Nomad. Then Fleetwood opened up in Pendleton as well as LeGrand. And so then most of my life, we sold Fleetwood. Then in the late 90s, early 90s, Nash started. So he broke off from Fleetwood, started his own company. And then I'm not sure if you know the history, but then Nash is who started Outdoors RV as well. Yes. So built in LeGrand.
It was interesting. The place, so there's this whole setup. So we should take a little detour here from your story.
Sure.
When we were there, my husband and I had driven the entire length of the country, 3,300 miles. But that same day, there was somebody who had driven all the way from Alaska.
Right.
To pick up an RV parked right next to ours. I mean, you guys have people coming from all over North America to pick up this one kind. Okay. Mm-hmm. So you've got quite a system. And part of the system is that, you make some, you give people a bunch of choices where they can stay with their RV the very first night, because you're not going to know what the hell to do with it. And we
Right.
ended up staying out in the back of that casino.
Yeah. Wild horse.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you know, we drive right up. We're still trembling at the wheel of this thing. And we get it all undone without some giant fight, only to realize that the spot that we're at has no water. The water thing's broken.
Oh, no.
So a couple went by in a truck and we were frantic. It was getting dark. You know, the whole rule, you don't set up when it's dark. And this couple went by and I ran up and waved and stopped, and they rolled down their window. And I said, "Oh, can you help us? We don't even know whether this thing is broken or not. It looks broken to us, but can you help us?" And they said, "Sure. We probably run into that before. We've been doing this for 52 years."
Oh, wow.
They had bought a Nash from your dealership 52, or I don't know, many, many years ago when you first started doing the Nash. And they were there to look at some more, something new. They didn't still have, they have many, many, many RVs since then. But they were so nice, and they ran on and on and on about Thompson's RV.
Oh, isn't that cool? Yeah.
And then they helped us with the water.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it
That's
helped
amazing.
us hook it all back up. And so, 52 years of running around pulling a travel trailer. That just sounds like crazy. That's the kind of folks that you guys are working with too. So it's this mutual thing that you got going. Like you said, your dad's a nice guy. Is being nice the very beginning step of being a leader in the gratitude economy?
Yeah. So I don't know, when we talked about having this podcast and we talked about a little bit about the gratitude economy, to me, it seems like second nature, right? You grew up in a small town. You grew up doing business with friends, family, teachers, neighbors. In a small town, you have to do good business or you're not going to have a good reputation. And you wouldn't make it. You have to be that great guy. My dad had to be that great guy that stood behind what he sold, that was honest about his used cars, his used trailers, whatever, because he knew he'd known these people his whole life, or he was going to know these people for the rest of his life. So, there's still people that come in that tell me they bought their first car from my dad when they were 16 years old. And that's kind of a fun, or I used to get stories about how they bought their first car from my grandpa. So it's important to do business like that. But I do think being a good human, that's where it stems from. If you're a good human, because really ultimately on a spiritual level, this is an energy exchange. You paying me for a product and me paying, or, me delivering a good quality product, all of that is an energy exchange. And so it's important to have a good energy about you. But like you said, it's mutual. And that's something that's come in the last 10 or 15 years, more so than the past. Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. Corinne and I had a short chat, and then I realized we better hit the record button before we started. And we talked about how my husband and I had come across this notion of the gratitude economy because we were both dentists, or we both are dentists. And we just ran our practice from day one, given every single person who wanted it in this county our home phone. Probably 25,000 people have our home phone. And it was a mutual thing that nobody ever took advantage of that. I don't get a call at home more than once a month. And I'm happy to rescue people because they only use it when they're just in dire straits. And it's this, I worked with a guy named Casey at Thompson's RV who was just a godsend because we're totally new to this world. Like, we were serious wilderness canoe campers. We even took our kids wilderness camping when they were in diapers. So we leapt over the whole pop-up camper phase and all the other we just went right from the wilderness canoe camping and cutting off the end of your toothbrush to save weight. That's what we used to do. All the way up to buying this extraordinary RV that's very unique that you guys sell, and we can go into that. But it's a mutual thing. It's like this energy exchange that's it doesn't have a shred of transactionalness in it, Corinne. Let's just start right there.
That's great to hear. That's great to hear, because if we were to talk about the just let's say just from the time that I've been in the business, right? When I started 16, 17 years old, which would have been 1998-ish.
Yeah.
So people can figure out my age.
Yeah.
They know how to do math.
Well, you look
But
young.
yeah, well, thank you. But basically, back then we were still doing print advertising. We were still selling to a very small market area. Everybody sold within a certain kind of radius. The internet was so new. It was the dial-up AOL, right? The internet wasn't a big thing. It was just a different time. People were extremely price centered, not necessarily value. Even if you had a better quality of trailer, it took a lot more, I don't want to say selling, but you had to really sell your product and your dealership and all of that. And I mean, maybe part of that has changed because we've been around for so long. But basically, it felt a lot more like a dog eat dog world back then. And again, that might have been my perspective as a young girl because it's a very male centric.
Yeah, I've lived in it. There was only 5 girls in my dental school class.
Exactly. Right. Yeah, they're not typically the dentist, right? I mean, that's just the world we live in. And so, it felt like a more dog eat dog world. And so it has progressed, I think, slowly to more of a value centered business. At least that's the way we have centered our business. And so maybe it's the fact that that's who we are now attracting. Maybe out there is still a dog eat dog world. Maybe between those people and the way they do their business, their energy that they're giving off, maybe they're all still fighting, right? We're over here in our own little world doing the value. And so we're getting in return. I've always said we have the best customers. And that's the truth. We truly, truly attract the cream of the crop, the coolest people, just like you. We meet the neatest people from all over the United States. And that's been really fun over the last 6 or 7 years is when it's really changed.
Okay, so there's so many issues that you just referred to. I don't even know where to start. But one of them is this loop that so you're doing really good business. So people who value really good business over price. So it's really about people's values. Just like in dentistry, there's people who will just, they just would never let anyone but my husband touch them. He gives the best shots in the world. You can't even feel his shots. All the things he'll talk. He'll remember your dog's name and talk about your Disney trip that you told him about last time. He's just a lovely human, like you were talking about your dad.
Yeah.
And that probably, we weren't immediately successful. We moved into our little town in Vermont cold. We were from nowhere. We were 28 years old. But eventually that relationship oriented way has the long haul. It eventually it's all word of mouth. You create so many raving fans that people would go nowhere else. It's so compounding. So there is this world of transactional whatever, transactional hairdressers, transactional financial advisors, transactional where you just go there and you get the deal you get and you get whatever you can. That's the end of it. And then there is this other world. That's what I guess the purpose of this podcast episode is for me to share with people what I've been observing all around me for the last, and you're right, I think it's 6, 8, at most 10 years, but maybe closer to 6 or 7, that people are really counting relationship as a part of the value that they're paying for.
Right. In relationship, I mean, that's a huge part of human nature, right? If you study health, it is an extremely important aspect. Community, relationships, that's a huge aspect of overall health. So I think we have lost that sense of community in a lot of ways. And even they talk about social media and things like that and how we have all these friends, but we don't actually have close relationships. I think we're trending the other direction. I think that it has trended this way and it's sort of reached its peak. And I think it's going to start trending back the old-fashioned direction, the old school direction. Relationships, Mm-hmm.
And relationships tied to this word of mouth thing. Like my husband and I have never and would never in a trillion years spend a single nickel on advertising.
Yeah.
And dentists that advertise all the time. So we never needed to. We had nothing but word of mouth all our lives. And then once the internet happened, which, we went for half of our business lives with no internet. Then once the internet happened, people were putting such rave reviews on the Google reviews, and people trusted that as their trusted advisor, the reviews. So then we used to keep track. We do keep track that about half our new patients come from word of mouth. Their husband comes in and goes home and says, "Oh my gosh, Janine, you got to go there." Or the other half come from these fantastic Google reviews that we have generated. And so right here, I have to share why we drove the 3,000 miles one way to get to you is because we do our homework. Oh my gosh. Dentists are usually like the nuttiest people on doing homework. We're just fastidious little people. We could literally not find a negative word about you guys on the internet.
Yeah. And in this day and age, that's tough. It's tough. Yeah.
It just blew us away. You could pick, I don't want to make this episode too much about the RV world because Corinne's such a great spokesperson for the gratitude economy. So we'll find our way through that. But just to tell you, I didn't know anything about the RV world. There's brands. There's big brands. And there's Facebook pages for each brand. And so you go to these Facebook pages and you really get the whole landscape of people's experiences and their fears and their anger.
Right.
It's really
all
something.
of it. The gamut.
All of it, just like in every other. But with Thompson's RV, we could not find anybody who had a complaint. And we said, our life is too busy. Our time is too precious. Our vacation time is so small. We just can't do business with somebody who we're going to get out to Timbuktu in the woods and then the darn thing won't work, right? This is a gamble and we have to make the best choice we can to get something that's not going to be maintenance for us and to have a relationship with somebody who we can call for that thing that does inevitably need attention. And that's what you guys are enjoying now, I think. And that is the future of the gratitude economy, is that people who are in it will find such long-term success in word of mouth and Google reviews and the kind of service that you're aiming for.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And, it reminds me of, for instance, I think I mentioned little shops in Pendleton. We've lost a lot of little shops since the internet and whatnot. And there's this one bookstore that comes to mind. And from the time Kindle and Amazon came out, or the Barnes and Nobles of the world, right? She kind of just gave up. It was like, oh, I can't compete with the big guys. I can't compete with the internet. And I can say the polar opposite, that the internet has been an absolute godsend for our company, because how on earth would you know about Thompson RV in Pendleton, Oregon, a town of 15,000 people? How would you know about us without the internet? So I think there's always a perspective that a person needs to, you can't just give up. You have to look at the positive. You have to know when Fleetwood went out of business, we were not sure what we were going to do because we had Nash and we had Fleetwood. And all of a sudden, our bread and butter, our trailer manufacturer that was built right there in town, went out of business. We had to have faith that there was something better that was going to come along, that something better is always on the horizon. So, there's a certain level of faith, right? And that's when Outdoors RV came about. And now we don't sell anything but Outdoors RV and a little bit of Arctic Fox and Nash, but it's almost all Outdoors RV. And so imagine had we just given up, and imagine had we just given up because of the internet. And ultimately, that is really what's catapulted us into a whole new level of business and being part of the gratitude economy. And what an amazing world that we live in, that you can now find the dentist that you're looking for. You can find the RV that you're looking for. You can find anything.
Yeah,
you can find anything on the internet.
Yes. Do we need people like our accountants and our attorneys and our insurance folks and our financial advisors. Like, these are some of the most precious private parts of our lives. We don't tell
Mm-hmm.
people our weight or our finances,
Right.
but
Or our age.
our age, but we're looking, and so we are all looking for that trusted advisor in those niches in our lives.
Yes.
And I just think we got to look at this more, and we've got to look around us in our businesses, whether they're our businesses or we work for someone else, and say, do we want to get out there and, fight for the scraps? Just, whatever's, however you make your way in the transactional world, deals here, sideways things there, or do we want to live in this world like you've described, where we are in these relationships with so many people who feel grateful to have us in their lives?
Mm-hmm. Well, and on that same token, how do you want your customers to treat you, right? So, I mean, I think every time when I go out and I'm purchasing something from somebody, I never, if even went to Italy last year. They have these little markets, just kind of like you see in Mexico, and people haggle with the people. I don't haggle. These people, they're out there working their tails off, and I have more than enough. So I pay them exactly what they're asking. And I never want to haggle. I always, like you said, your car dealership that you deal with, we have a car dealership we deal with, because who on earth wants to go buy a car and have to go through that rigmarole of seeing a sales manager and this and that? So anybody who's possibly listening to this podcast, another thing to think about when you're thinking about your own business is actually, how do you go out into the world? How do you spend your money? And how do you treat others when you're spending money? Because that's exactly what you're going to get back. So you talk about having the best dental patients, and I talk about having the best RV, purchasers, buyers. Well, that's, in my opinion, it reflects directly on how I do business and how you do your business, right?
It's a cycle.
It is.
It's totally a cycle. Okay. So Corinne's going to answer some really sort of pointed, nuts and bolts questions about being a leader in the gratitude economy. We're going to take a break, and we come back. We'll be able to incorporate some of this stuff into our own lives and businesses. You know how the constant negative noise in our digital lives feels like it's reaching a boiling point? Now, many of us have tuned out the news and social media almost entirely. Well, it doesn't have to be that way. There are newsworthy stories about amazing progress, innovation, leaps in human potential, and wonders in the natural world, and they're just not reaching the top of our feeds. We can have access to this, but none of us has the time, or maybe even the emotional stamina, to search through all the doom and gloom news to find what's right with the world. Okay, enter the Goodness Exchange. There, we are giving instant access to positive news for curious people. Did you hear about the recent Harvard study that found that exposure to just 4 minutes of good news can make you 32% less anxious and 18% more optimistic? Well, I don't know about you, but I need those kind of numbers in my life. So if you want to live with more joy and way less fear, it's really simple. First, you join us at the Goodness Exchange. Everyone around the world has the opportunity to access this kind of content. And we've promised no politics for about a decade, so you're safe from all that distraction as well. Second, you allow this new, more positive, balanced worldview to put a spring in your step again. It can change the way you react to your kids, your coworkers, everybody you come in contact with. And the stories we write about can make you the idea person in your circles. These challenging times call for us to wake up and take control of our perspective. The people who use the Goodness Exchange have the ability to react to the harshness of the world much different, because they know way more about what's right with the world. And that's a resource. So subscribe to the Goodness Exchange, our YouTube channel and the podcast, and use this content to live a more expansive worldview. It is still an amazing world out there, and you can be a part of it. Welcome to the Conspiracy of Goodness. Okay, we're back with Corinne Thompson from Thompson's RV in Pendleton, Oregon. Now, I know we're talking to, world leaders and scientists and NGO founders all over the world who fed billions of children. You might be asking yourself why Dr. Linda is talking to someone from an RV dealership in Oregon.
Right?
I have been wanting to chat with someone about this thing that my husband and I call the gratitude economy that we are searching for in our lives. And we want to leave the attention economy behind. As I explained at the opener, the attention economy is what we've been in since the advent of radio and newspapers. It's just people shouting, loud advertising, expensive advertising to just get our attention. But I just don't think we're responding to that anymore. And most of us are looking for folks in every corner of our lives that to do business with, who can feel like insiders that are going to give us trusted advice. And my husband and I recently decided that we were going to get into the RV world. We were looking for a travel trailer that could do pretty much 4 seasons. We live in Vermont. This thing that I just bought from Corinne's company is sitting out in my driveway in a foot of snow already. And we drove 3,100 miles to do business and probably passed thousands of trailers on the way that would have been adequate. But we wanted to do business with Corinne's company. And as I was standing there in your showroom, you and I bumped into each other. I said, okay, this is obvious. I'm going to interview Corinne to get the word out about the gratitude economy and help people start looking around them to see who they want to reward with their business,
Right.
who they want to be in the cycle of energy that Corinne and I have talked about. Yeah. And I want to also help people who own small to medium-sized businesses see that this exists and that it's another way forward, a different way forward than what you may be struggling with. Because the gratitude economy, if you do business in the gratitude economy, it's about finding meaning and purpose in your own life as well. I mean, you probably get up in the morning and you like to go to work. Am I right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I work with my mom and my brother and some of my best friends. So yeah, it's pretty great.
Yeah. And this talk to us about meaning and purpose in a business like yours that's really focused on serving others.
Yeah. It's funny that you just asked that because as you said, there might be people listening to this that are scientists that have changed the world. And when you asked me to be on the podcast, there's always that sort of little bit of doubt. Like, am I qualified to talk about this subject? And I think everybody at some point in their life wants to know what their life's purpose is, right? So I've done that deep dive into, is selling trailers. Is that my sole purpose? Am I meant for something more? Am I meant to change lives? And I've actually come back around to the fact that this is what I've wanted to do since I was a little kid. I mean, my brother and I grew up at the business. And so it was something that I knew I would do from a very young age. And the world needs all different types, right? The world needs, like, if you and your husband are wanting to travel and see the world, you want a travel trailer. If you want a travel trailer, you want a good quality one. If you want a good quality one, you want a good quality dealership. So there are times when I minimize what we do, right? And I shouldn't do that because ultimately I'm still helping you. Like we talked about the energy exchange, it is still making somebody's life brighter. And when I think of it that way, when I try and really go to work every day knowing that what I do for a living actually is bringing joy to people's lives, it's their retirement, it's the way they're traveling with their grandkids. I've had a lot of people that homeschool their kids just like I do. And so they have set out on a year, traveling vacation to educate their children on the road. It's a big deal. So no matter who's listening to the podcast, if a person does own a small business, maybe you even just sell knickknacks, but maybe that knickknack brings joy to the person who takes it home with them, then you are fulfilling your life's purpose.
Absolutely. I really, really think that any service that brings joy to others, especially in this day and age, is something that we should be proud to offer. Right. I mean, I really felt like everyone in your business was in service to others. They just, first of all, everybody is actually an RVer. They actually have a
Yes.
trailer. They have your trailers, and they
Right.
speak from the heart, and they wipe their brow and say, "Yeah, I've run into that," and that kind of shared humanity. Chuck and I have teeth. When people
Right.
ask me questions about whether I should get a root canal or not, I tell them the story of this tooth right here in my own
Right.
mouth. I mean,
Right.
we all are looking for the same things when it
Right.
comes to, knowing what to do about things like insurance or banking, or what
Mm-hmm.
have you. Think about how much word of mouth counts in those real sense. Doctors, oh my gosh, try and find a
Mm-hmm.
doctor today. Well,
Right.
the good ones, what I've noticed when I ask patients, do you have a general physician? They'll say, when they say yes, you know what the number one thing they say next is about that person, if they're wholehearted about loving this person? Oh, and they never run out of the room on me. They spend time with me.
Yeah.
That's what we all want, right? We want to be
Mm-hmm.
heard. We want somebody to feel like they are choosing us and we're choosing them, right? We
Right.
love that we're choosing each other part of the thing. Talk to
Mm-hmm.
me about how any of that works in the world that you're in.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head when you said that all of us use the trailers. So that actually doesn't seem like rocket science, but so many places, I mean, every car dealership, everybody drives cars. Shockingly, RV dealerships, the people working there have never RV'd, not a day in their life. So growing up in the industry, and Casey grew up in the industry. I mean, all of us grew up camping, and now we all still continue to camp. So we have had issues. I mean, everybody's had issues. I go out on the road and I'm instantly calling the guys like, "Hey, what do I do here? What do I do there?" Even though I've done it for my whole entire life, there's still things that I run into as far as problems. And so I think that gives us a different perspective when a customer calls and they are having an issue because we've been there. We've been on the side of the road in Nowhere, Utah. I almost lost a wheel, right? I mean, it was just a crazy, crazy thing that happened. And to find a little mom and pop shop that was quick to get me in and get me back on the road. When we have people that call and need help, and maybe they're not our customer, maybe it's not our brand of trailer, maybe it's not any of those things. But again, like we talked about earlier, if we service that person and get them back on the road and they're amazing and they're so thankful, they give us this great Google review, who knows who that reaches? But I believe that anytime you do a good deed, it comes back to you tenfold, right? So, I mean, it might have been their Google review that you read that made you drive from Vermont, right? And we know too that that's how we would want to be treated when we're on the road. So, I mean, there's nothing like towing a trailer with 3 little kids in the back of your truck, and breaking down on the side of the road and feeling so insanely helpless. And so it's nice when we can pay that back and pay it forward to other people. And I think that's this whole thing that we're talking about, that gratitude exchange.
One of the things that you just mentioned that I think is fundamental to the gratitude economy is this ripple effect.
Mm-hmm.
You just told some stories right there,
Yeah.
My kids, my oldest daughter and her fiance, they both have amazing virtual jobs, and they are looking right now at travel trailers to go off into the world. This is a daughter
Right.
that grew up canoe camping with us, so she's very
Yeah.
familiar with not sleeping in her own bed and all that. And we keep coming back saying, look what's on their lot. See if you can afford anything they have, right? Because I mean that's the ripple effect, right? That these kids, they don't have the budget that my husband and I had, but I'm saying it would be worth driving 6,000 miles.
Right.
I mean, you got to think about this, Corinne. Chuck and I did the math. We drove just one way, the same distance as it would be from Normandy, the beaches of France, Normandy, all the way past Moscow. And then
it's crazy.
Coming back, we added another distance that takes it all the way to Eastern Mongolia, China. Yeah. That's how far we drove.
I know.
Now, okay, and we're telling these kids, just look at their inventory. They
Right.
might have something used that, because it's the relationship. We
Right.
don't want them to have to fret. We want them to have somebody to call when they're on the side of the road that they can trust.
Absolutely. And again, not to get too much in the weeds with the RV portion of this business or this conversation, but people always say, well, why would I come out from wherever? I'm never going to see you again. I'm never going to use your warranty. You should give me a better price. And they have no idea the amount of, if you need to call us, we're right there. And you always get one of us. You always get Casey or my brother or myself. I mean, you can actually talk to us. It's so different than what people are used to with car dealerships or their typical RV dealerships, where you get passed along from person to person, finance department, etc. And nobody really knows who you are. Nobody really has any connection or ties to you. And so it really, again, that's that added value that we're talking about. And so I think that's really important. I think, we could have gotten bigger. We could have expanded. We could have multiple dealerships by now. And we've always chose not to, because we want to do the best quality of business we can. And we know that staying small is how we do that. Right?
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. You're making me think of some other examples to keep the conversation going on this ripple effect for a few minutes. So when we were out there, so this is how much I trust you guys. And I want people that own all kinds of businesses to listen to this little story and just think about it in their own realm. Right. So we were standing there, and we had a nice big F-250 that we just bought. So we had the right size truck for this trailer, all the things. But still, we kind of wanted to put in these things that people call airbags that kind of lift up the back of your truck. So I don't know why. That's a whole another topic. But okay. So Casey says, well, we got a dealership right here in town that I really trust. Maybe they could fit you in before you drive back to Vermont. We did not even ask what it cost, Corinne.
Yeah.
We just wanted this done. We wanted it done by somebody Casey trusted. Didn't even ask what it cost. Now, we're not independently wealthy. We should have asked what it cost. But we were just in the moment. It seemed like the right thing to do. So Casey tried to make all these phone calls, and unfortunately they didn't have the right size for us. So we would have had to wait for 3 days. And we had a long trip back, so we couldn't stay. Okay. So the story isn't finished. So that's the kind of trust that we all want in our businesses, no matter what kind of small, medium business we're running. We want people, our customers, to say, well, if that person's good enough for you, they're good enough for me.
Right.
Right? Like the oral surgeon that I refer to, or the gum specialist. People don't ask, oh, is he the cheapest? They never say that to me. They say, okay, now would you have him do stuff on you? And I say, well, yeah, he has. My son lost his front tooth. He's the guy I sent my own son to have his front tooth replaced, And then the story continues. So now we're back in Vermont. We still want that thing put on the back of our truck. And we can't find anybody here who seems to know what it is.
Oh, isn't that crazy?
Yeah. So you know what my plan is, though? I'm going to find the best person I can. Then I'm going to see if Casey will just talk to him for 5 minutes, talk to whoever it is for 5 minutes for me, and then call me back after the conversation's over and tell me that this guy's trustworthy or not. I even trust Casey's opinion so much that I would have him communicate with this person I've selected, and he'll be the judge of whether I do business with that next person. Yeah. That's a lot of trust.
Well, I think it comes down to credibility, right?
Right.
When somebody can really show that they're credible, and Casey is salt of the earth. I mean, that guy he's credible on everything. I would trust him with my life, truly. He would give you the shirt off his back. And I know people always say that, but he is really a great human. We are so, so blessed to have him with us. But yeah, so absolutely, he has credibility. And so if he says, this is the guy I would go to, absolutely. And on that same token though, if he said, we don't really have anybody in town that can do that, trust that he's telling you the truth then too. And so that, I think, maybe that's another topic that we could talk about. In order to be credible, you can't, especially in sales, dishonesty is not going to fly. There are people who don't know the answers of questions and they make them up, right? You have to be at a certain level of integrity to where people trust you and they know you're credible. And then that way they trust doing business with you. And then again, it's that circle. It's that circle of trusting people and the gratitude economy.
Yeah, they can say the hard things to you.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes.
Like Casey didn't agree with every single thing we said. He said, well, because we went back and forth about having a generator. And, we were just in this mindset that we want to have as much joy from this thing in the little amount of time that we're going to use it until we do actually retire. And, so he could tell us some hard things. Well, for me, he said, blah, blah, blah. And that's the same option that we all have, no matter what our business is.
Right.
We can, if you're authentic and if your heart is really with doing the right thing for the other person, they know that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We are one of the only dealerships that in today's day and age, there's a lot of half-ton truck drivers, right? Or SUV drivers. Outdoors RV, absolutely not ideal if you have a lightweight tow vehicle. Half tons, I mean, there's a couple, but I've had people that have said, fine, I'll go somewhere else because they'll sell me that trailer with my truck. And I don't know why on earth you wouldn't want to take a recommendation that it's unsafe, that it's not a good idea, but we always tell people, and I would say 99% of the time, when somebody comes to me and says, hey, I want to tow this trailer with this truck, and I email them back and tell them that's not a good idea. You either need to find a different brand of trailer that I don't sell, right? So I'm directing them away from my business, or you need to purchase a bigger pickup. They always come back with gratitude that I was honest because their local place or the other 5 people they talked to said, oh yeah, you're fine. Again, it stems from people not actually towing trailers. I mean, I personally have towed so many different trailers that I know what I'm comfortable with and what my truck is good with. And so I think that's, again, we're cycling back to credibility, right? But being honest, when you're honest, then you become credible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, in any business.
In any business, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's all we're looking for that human part of the relationship is honesty. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so talk to me about something you mentioned a minute ago. Let's talk about this world of 7 or 8 years ago. It was harder. You had to put out the deals and the advertising and all that, and somehow that's gone. That's different now. And you're not sure, but maybe the arc of time is that you have so much word of mouth out there now.
Absolutely.
So getting to be a real success in the gratitude economy, would you agree, has probably an arc of time that you have to invest in the beginning?
Sure. Absolutely. So I think, let's say somebody was starting up a business tomorrow, okay, right? Whatever the business is. I think if you start out by being a really good human and really pay attention to how you do business when you're spending your money, because that's your energy, if you pay attention to that, that's going to set you on the correct trajectory to have your business be successful, even just from a universal perspective, right? So I think if you start there, that's a good base. Then, but as far as advertising, so if we go back to my own experience, I remember about 10 years ago, we quit print advertising. It was definitely going the way of Google, and that sort of advertisement. And I think it was 10 years ago that my credit card had gotten compromised. And I didn't realize it, but I hadn't advertised because my credit card wasn't working on the auto pay, hadn't worked for a year and a half. And for some reason, I didn't know. We hadn't even been advertising and had our best year ever. And then our best year ever. And then our best year ever. And so I said, I'm just going to give it a whirl. I'm not going to do any advertising. With the invention of Facebook and Instagram, we tried that a little bit. We did a little bit on Facebook and Instagram, which I think works a little bit, but really it's been all word of mouth, completely word of mouth. Then when we really started putting out YouTube videos, and that was actually, we had done a few of them, but not as much as we do now. That kind of started with COVID. We had some people that wanted to do an interview with Outdoors RV and then with myself, and they posted that. And then COVID hit and I was getting phone calls. Hey, my local dealership is closed, or I can't find this trailer. Could you possibly do a walk around and show me what this trailer looks like? And it's so funny too, to think about, I don't want to get too off in the weeds, but to think about how everything happened perfectly in alignment. And again, I think it all stems from just being a good human. And then everything just perfectly aligned. And we started doing YouTube videos, and people started calling and saying, you guys seem really great. You seem like really nice people. And it's like, well, we are really nice people. Just be a really nice person, be a really good human. And I truly think that you will get back exactly what you put out into this world. And it's that energy that we keep talking about. And so that really has catapulted our business to a whole new level. But also it has brought in a clientele on our end that is different. It's different than it was 10 years ago. 10 years ago, I would say that people weren't as respectful. They sort of, especially if you were a woman, my mom or I would get kind of the short end of the stick on some of those customers. And I hate to play that card, but I mean, it's the truth. And so I think it's really helped just everything that's happened in the last 10 years with the internet, with everything. And people can really see what kind of a person you are and see the value that you're putting out into the world. And then, maybe they call the dealership and they get my brother and they're like, my gosh, I've gotten more information from you than I've gotten from the last 6 places I've called, because he knows his stuff, because we grew up doing it, because we use it. So, I mean, it's a multifaceted approach, right? But it just has sort of also, I don't want to say it's been a little bit of luck, but it's been a little bit of just luck. And I think, again, if I was recommending something to anybody out there starting a new business or in the middle of their business, is to have faith that it will succeed. If you can do business honestly, do it well. Obviously, you can't be terrible at what you do and you're not going to be successful, right? You need to be really, really good at what you do. In fact, you need to know it better than anybody else in the field, right? I mean, for a fact that nobody knows Outdoors RV like Thompson RV. Nobody. And I'm not trying to be braggy or anything of that nature, but it's the truth. And that's because that's what we do. And but I think if you can be a good human, know your product, know exactly what you're doing, and really be there to take care of people, you have no choice but to be successful. It's going to happen.
I want to address that luck thing. One of the earliest little phrases that I learned that I hung on to all through my business life is chance favors the prepared mind.
Yeah.
So this luck thing, it's so easy to use. Oh, I didn't have any luck. Oh, bad luck. Oh,
Right.
it's easy to use that as an excuse. It was our bad luck that the governor closed the dentistry down for 10 weeks in Vermont. And it was a nightmare there for a while for our big practice. Bad luck. But, chance favors the prepared mind. So what had happened was we had been so good at customer service. We'd given everyone our home phone number already for 25 years that actually when dentistry was closed down, we couldn't do more business. We couldn't do real business. We took care of everyone who had some horrifying thing happen to them. Just like that, which improved their lives, which made more Google reviews and which made better word of mouth. Like it all worked out because we had things prepared for years.
Yeah.
That.
You pre-paved that success. Absolutely.
Right. So, as people are thinking about this through the light of their own business, this conversation, I want them to remember that, this is something that will take time, but then we have to talk about the future proofing aspect of this. If you're willing to pay your dues on the front end and generate these raving fans like we are, and, stay the course, just stay the course. you're going to have a future-proofed business because it takes
Right.
so long for you to lose that trust. Talk to us about the future-proofing.
Right. Well, I think it's, again, the word that's coming up in my mind is authentic. It's like when you're authentic, when you go into work every day being authentic and really wanting to help people. So whether it's dentistry, and you end up, it's almost like you don't even realize that you're pre-paving for the future, but you are, because you're showing up every day authentically as who you are. And that's going to create those relationships. I mean, it's like I keep coming back to the fact that it's a full circle, because it's when you do that, it just provides that value to those people. But I think a lot of it's authenticity. And so if somebody, again, if, somebody's listening to this that maybe is starting up a business or something of that nature, just being authentically energetic about what you do and having faith in what you do, and all of that is going to pay off in the long run for sure. Just like you said, moving to Vermont at 28 years old and knowing nobody. It's not like you had friends and family that started coming to your dental practice. I mean, you had to start from scratch. That's a big deal.
Well, and that brings something that's part of this too. And we spent time with people. The big complaint when we rolled into town that age, the big complaint about the dentists that were already here, they were good dentists. I saw their work for years as they retired, and I had to take care of their patients. Lovely people. But one guy liked to watch TV while he was working on his patients.
Oh,
So he
interesting.
Yeah, that would be so weird. There was
the
a big
opposite
TV
of being present.
Yeah, blaring away for The Price is Right, apparently.
Right.
I don't know, right?
Yeah.
And there was another guy who had like nicotine-stained fingers and refused to wear gloves.
Yeah.
And the other guy was just like politically super, super aggressive with his patients, always talking about politics when their mouths were open and they couldn't defend themselves. So our town was ripe for somebody to just come into town and be nice, just be really good people and listen and just chat away if that's what the patient needed. We would, God, there's so many people we in our practice all our lives. If I can remember just like one little example, an older woman came in. She was out of sorts. I'd known her whole life, but she seemed out of sorts. And I put her back we had the little pleasantries, and then I put her back and she still seemed way out of sorts. So I sat her back up, and Robin, my assistant of 30 years, was sitting there. And I said, Janine, what's going on? You just don't seem like yourself. And she bursts into tears and tells us that she had a homeless nephew that no one in the family would take in. So she took him in, and he was stealing from her, and she was so afraid. Robin heard that much. She just left the room. She'd already dialed the local services that could help this poor woman, blah, blah, blah. She had already gotten her car warmed up, and she drove this lady to the social services, and they got her, like when I was out at Thompson RV, I felt like if there's just anything in town that I would have needed, or anything that had come up, even sideways of the whole RV thing, any of your people would have jumped to help Chuck and I. I felt like we were truly in the company of like-minded friends.
Right. Absolutely. And we do get that a lot. People always say, oh my gosh, you feel like family. And we get people that drive from all over the US. It's so funny too, because, you'll get that phone call. I'm calling from Florida. You must think I'm crazy. And I'm like, oh no, no, we get it all the time. But that's one thing too, that I've always wondered, how do you get it across to people why we're different? Right? How do you explain that without coming across as being like you're still trying to get them to come buy a trailer, right? And so I think as long as you just, again, coming back to authenticity, coming back to energy, when you do that, and maybe I put it out on a YouTube video and all I'm doing is showing the trailer, but my mom always teases me because she'll hear me on a phone call and it's like I'm in a therapy session. It'll be somebody I've never talked to in my life. And they tell me their entire life story. And honestly, I'm not saying that as a negative thing. I love the fact when people feel that just after a 10-minute conversation, that they can tell me everything that's going on in their life. And I'm not sure, maybe that's something you're born with, truly. Maybe the reason that lady opened up to you, maybe the reason your business is successful, a lot of it stems from just something you were intrinsically born with. And maybe that's part of my luck, for lack of a better term. But I think being, again, just lending an ear, don't be too busy. Don't watch The Price is Right while the people need you to be there. Because for some people, dental work, that is scary to them, right? And so they really need you to be present. To some people, purchasing an $80,000 RV from 3,000 miles away is scary. They will lose sleep over that. They need to know that you're going to be there for them. And that goes the same, like you mentioned earlier, insurance agents. You might think that you're not selling anything tangible, but you absolutely are selling. If somebody's car gets damaged and they, the people are telling them that it's only worth $20,000 when we all know it's worth $40,000, and you go to bat for them, or somebody's husband dies and you're the one to present the wife with the life insurance check that's going to help her pay the bills. All of those things are important, and again, if I cycle way back into talking about our life's purpose and thinking that selling travel trailers isn't a calling, or selling insurance isn't a calling, because it doesn't sound as admirable as being a, physical therapist or a doctor or a neurosurgeon or a professional speaker, right? It's still, this world needs everybody. It needs everything. It needs everybody. And we all play our little part. And so being the best at what you do, wasn't it off Mary Poppins? Wasn't it Dick Van Dyke that says, like, if you're going to be a chimney sweep, be the best damn chimney sweep?
Yes.
He probably didn't say damn, though, because it was Dick Van Dyke on Mary Poppins.
Step in time.
Exactly. But I mean, you need to be the best at what you do, and you need to be authentic, and you need to be caring. And if people need you for that 30 minutes that they're in your dental chair, or that 20 minutes on a phone call where for some reason it took a turn from RVs into their life story, be there for them, because who knows what kind of a difference you made and what kind of a ripple effect it has in everybody's lives.
I can see that in the way you guys are doing business in like an unhurried way as well.
Yeah.
I remember in the office one day, this older woman brought in a little jar. She brought in her gallstone that she had taken out. And because I said to her, "Oh, Carolyn, how's things been? I heard you were sick, blah, blah." And he said, "Well, she said, I had my gallstone taken out, but I brought it to show you." She whipped it out of her pocket, and of course I was running behind, and I could have just brushed the whole thing off, but I just decided to go all in. So we had these cameras in our office that we used in people's mouths constantly, like a digital camera about the size of your finger. You could stick it in people's mouths and see better. Well, I just said, "Get that thing out." We put it on the table, and I put the camera over it, and we blew that thing up this big on the screen in front of us, and it looked like an asteroid. It looked like the surface of the moon. It was really crazy to see what a gallstone actually looks like up close. And so we made this great fun of it. She never forgot it. We talked about, it broke open our relationship. Every time she came in, we went in new directions because we'd shared that little moment, not related to dentistry, but related to just being humans in a sense of wonder together.
Right. And you said something a minute ago that did make me think of a story that I constantly talk about at work with Casey and my brother, and because it's a really great reminder. So I had a gentleman, it's probably been 5 years ago, that flew out from Denver to surprise his wife that they were going to buy this Glacier Peak fifth wheel, which, was expensive. He owned at least one or two Mercedes dealerships in a very big metropolitan area. I won't say where. And I think he owned a few other dealerships. So he had, it was a big deal. And so when he walked into Thompson RV, our little, remodeled grocery store turned RV showroom, if you've been I've never been into a Mercedes dealership. I've been into BMW or some of those. They are fancy. Holy smokes. Absolutely tip top. And so I was slightly embarrassed. I remember thinking, gosh, I wonder what he's going to think about this. Or all of a sudden you see all the dust bunnies, right? You see all the dust bunnies in the corners. And I felt very small. Long story short, I said something, I go, you own dealerships, like big dealerships, and you sell fancy cars. Can you give me any advice? what would you tell us that we could do better? Because I really want to know from your perspective what we could do better. And I don't know what I was expecting for him to say, well, tidy this up or move this or, whatever. He said, Corinne, after I met your dealership, so this was the second time he came back to pick up the trailer. And he said, I went back and I told all of my salespeople, he goes, I called a sales meeting and I said, you guys could learn something from this dealership. And I'm standing there thinking, what on earth is he talking about? No way, right? And he said, when these people come to pick up their Mercedes, often my salesman, it might be the 6th car they've delivered that day. They give them the keys. They kind of go, yeah, this is your stuff. And here you go. There you go. And he said, I grew up walking past a Mercedes dealership thinking one day I'm going to own that car. And he said, to these people, this is their dream car. They have waited their entire life to get this car. Well, think about these outdoors RVs. Think about these people who they have saved. We get people, they're not ready to buy for 3 to 5 years. They're waiting for retirement. It's a big deal. So to us, it might just be the 3rd delivery of the day or the 7th delivery of the week. And so to us, it's just, oh, here's your this, here's your that. We have to remember every single time that somebody comes in that this is their dream, that this is their life savings. Could be. Maybe it's not. Maybe they're independently wealthy and it's no big deal to them. But every single person has to be treated as if this was their dream come true. And so that was just, I remember him saying that to me and my mind was a little bit blown because he said that we took the time to really go through everything and really, when people get excited and they come and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited to see my trailer. I get like this because I'm like, I'm so excited for you to see your trailer and I can't wait for you to go out. I love when people send me pictures from their vacations. People probably think, oh, she's too busy. She doesn't want that kind of stuff. I love it. I love getting happy emails that are like, here's us in Alaska. Here's us in Nova Scotia. Here's us in Florida. Because it really does just sort of solidify again that what we do, what everyone does in this world, if you do it with heart, it is your life's calling and it really is important to the world.
It's so important. All right. So there's 2 things that we can't wrap this up without talking about. Okay. I want to add something to that point right there. I hope people have hung on to this interview long enough to hear the point you just made. I have a great story that I tell my staff in the dental office. So I'm very transparent about things. I'm not squeamish about what I talk about. But I needed a hysterectomy for years. Things are going way wrong. And my obstetrician tried every single angle on me. Finally, one day, he said, Linda, your uterus is the size of a 6-month pregnancy. And I'm like, oh my God, he's this really nice French guy. Oh, what? I'm walking around looking 6 months pregnant. And that was it. I decided then and there. And he knew. He finally had me. He tried science. He tried statistics. He tried everything. And I said, when can you do it? And he knew he had to say like this week. And he said, how about Friday? So I walked up to their front desk and I made this big decision that they've been hounding me to do for 10 years. And I get up to the front desk and I made this decision and I'm set. And the lady hands me a crumpled piece of paper that's copied sideways on the copier that describes the procedure. She's checked the wrong box because I wanted to keep my ovaries. And she's checked the wrong box for complete hysterectomy. And I'm like, no. Okay, so then it set me all askew about when this procedure was going to come up. I made my husband write on my stomach, leave the ovaries with a black marker.
That's hilarious.
I'm not kidding. We did this because that woman had treated it like it was the 100th hysterectomy that they were going to do that day. Mm-hmm. And it was the only one I would ever have.
Yes. On your only organs.
On my only organs.
Kind of a big deal.
But you can say that for the dentist, it's the only, some people, they get a crown. We could treat that very like, oh, we do 10 crowns a day. No.
Right.
It's the only crown that person may ever have, or only root canal, or only, right? Yep. What if we thought about this through the lens of the hairdresser, like this is the only 30-year class reunion you're going to ever go to, and this woman's fixing you up for your 30-year class reunion, you can't treat it like it's your 10th customer of the day. You got to treat every single one. So that's how we inspired our folks in our dental office. We said, we have to treat every patient like they're the only person we're seeing that day.
Absolutely.
And I really want folks who are in the business world to really take that to heart, because I think that's at the heart of what you guys do.
Absolutely.
We were surprised to see other people were picking up their RV that day. We thought, I don't know, we thought we were the only ones that,
Yeah.
No, but you guys made us feel like we were the only special ones that day.
Absolutely. And we actually plan that. We try to keep it to a max of 3 a day, because once you get into too many, and we try to explain that to people, if somebody has to reschedule or something happens and they become our 4th or our 5th, we tell them like, hey, just so you know, I mean, if you could come this day, you're going to get the best attention possible. If I tack you on, these 3 people have already been scheduled, right? They already have their date. So you're going to be kind of my 4th person. So, and usually people are great. They're like, it's the only day we can come.
Trusted,
we'll
honest,
be patient.
That's the trusted advisor honesty thing going on right there. Tell them, people, if you had said that to us, if you had said, well, sorry, you're driving 3,000 miles, but we already have 5 deliveries on that day or whatever, 3.
Right.
We would have said, okay, we'll go do something else, the Snake River for a day, and then we'll come because we want your best. That's what we're driving out there for. And I want to impress upon people that doesn't matter if you own a dress shop or you're a bank teller or you're, it's for every small business, maybe especially in businesses that really count on people feeling like you're the only person they saw that day.
Yeah. Well, you just said something about being a bank teller or anything. I think people think often that whatever it is they're doing is just a small, minor thing. But ultimately, if you smile at somebody that's having a bad day and it makes their day better, even just being that bank teller, I mean, or I shouldn't say even just being, right?
Yeah,
that's the whole point though, but that's how sometimes people feel or think
about
and
themselves.
Ultimately, again, one person, one smile, we all know how far that can go and the ripple effect that has. And so imagine now that you are doing big business, dentistry, selling big ticket items, it's all important.
Okay. So I'm giving a talk pretty soon to a group of financial advisors, insurance folks. And I was listening to your talking about the videos you make. And I was thinking, yes, this is the world of being a trusted advisor, sort of first investing in your relationship with people before they ever get there. That may be the first reason why Chuck and I knew who you guys were, because we must have watched 30 videos that you've done. I felt like when we were getting on this phone call today that I already knew you. We'd known each other since way back.
Yeah.
But it's because I spent so much time with you.
Yes.
And I always like to encourage people that want to be a part of the gratitude economy to give their information and their knowledge away free in video format on the internet as much as they can. Nobody sells your brand east of the Mississippi that I know. So here we are sitting in Vermont. We did find one dealership that does. And we went there. I'm not going to say where because it's only one. But here's the thing. You had given us so much knowledge, so much of yourself. There's like these videos that you do, and any business person can do that. I did informational videos for the dental office long before it was popular. Right. The more you give of yourself, the more giving you look, and you presenting yourself. So when we went to this dealership, oh my gosh, we could have bought almost the exact same thing we drove 6,000 miles for, but they were so, it was one of those Herb Tarlick kind of used car salesman situations, and all that sales language, like, okay, but it was so horrible. I couldn't wait to get out of there. And of course, I'm a nice person, so we put up with it for the longest time. But we had within, I'd say 20 minutes, it didn't matter how much this thing cost or how much break they were going to give me or all the deals. I just already knew you from the internet, and I knew I'd done my homework on the Thompson dealership and stuff. So I really encourage people who want to be part of the gratitude economy to give their information away freely. and just put it out there on the internet and put your best self and be a good human, and it will come back to you in spades.
Agreed. 100%. Because again, just like we talked about, so where I spend my money, that's my energy. I've earned that money. That's my energy. Where I spend that, it comes back tenfold. If I spend that money with the right mindset and the right gratitude, it comes back to me tenfold. If I put out that information on the internet with the right mindset, then it comes back tenfold. And so you're absolutely right. So sure, we probably sell tons of trailers for other dealerships, and that's okay, because again, that's helping Outdoors RV. That's helping, the entire line that we can't even see. Where does Outdoors RV buy their ovens? Where do they buy their sidewalls? Where do they buy all their products? It all, if I can put out a video, and I'm not trying to boast about the videos by any means, but if I can put out that information, which has a trickle effect, how cool is that?
Yeah. No, I will say that I'll just tell you how this works, folks. I'm just really trying to make this impression on all small business owners. There's another guy that does a lot of very good videos. He's called the RV guy. He's for Bish's RV, Josh, the RV guy. You've probably caught his videos. Well, I had to drive from Vermont to Illinois last summer, and I tracked him down. I actually went to that dealership that was his dad's dealership originally, and it was bought out by Bish's, which is a huge, big chain. And I talked to the greatest guy, Big John. My husband's 6'6", and that was another reason why we chose Outdoors RV, because my husband can't fit in a lot of RVs that are only a 6'6" ceiling to start with. But, gosh, I spent an entire morning with Big John, and guess what? He was really good. They didn't sell Outdoors RV, so we didn't do business with them. But I'm sending my daughter there. Like, this is the way it goes. It's just a giant circle. She might not be able to afford an Outdoors RV, but if she's going to buy from somebody, I want her to buy from John, because I spent that whole morning with him. Like, these are investments that we're putting, these relationships we're building. You just never know where things are going to land on those ripple effects. Okay, so if this interview had only been 3 minutes, like if I just had called you up and said, Corinne, talk to me for a few minutes about how you think, like, this has transpired for you, for your whole family. Like, what do you really wish people knew now that you know a little bit more about this gratitude economy? What do you really wish people knew?
Yeah, well, I think it goes back to kind of those, I didn't really come up with any kind of key pillars, but I think, as we talked earlier, it definitely stems from, first and foremost, just being a really good human. Everything in life, if you are just a really good human at everything you do, the universe will reward you with everything, right? We all know that. And so, well, maybe we don't all know that. Maybe that is part of the problem. So becoming a really good human, just being a really good human, honesty and authenticity. If you can be authentically yourself, and if you can really truly believe in what it is that you do, again, maybe you're a bank teller, maybe you sell insurance, maybe you sell RVs, maybe you're a dentist. All of those things, if you can be the best at what you do, and if you can just make sure that you're being authentic, you're being honest, and you're a really good human, and where you spend your money and how you spend your money. So I think with all of those things, that's kind of going to set you up for success without diving deep into the actual picking apart a business and how to run a business, right? I think just from a broad perspective, I think if you can start with those key pillars, I think a person would be very successful at whatever it is that they choose to do.
Mm-hmm. And what my husband and I found out, and what I think you're talking to us about too, is that you're playing the long game. It's, when those downturns come, like, think of all the raving fans that you guys already had when the pandemic came, and then suddenly everybody thought they had to have an RV.
Yes.
Right? But you built, that's just the same way with us. We built those relationships and put in the time and gave out the phone numbers and loved people to death for 15 years before the downturn came.
Right.
So, well, thank you so much. I can't tell you, if you, I guess I'm going to tell you, if you are in the mode for the travel trailer life, everything about Thompson's RV exemplified the gratitude economy for me. And that's why I chose to spend the last hour with Corinne. But I know that she's also the kind of person that you could probably track her down. And if you're a small business person and you see that there is this world that's so transactional around you, I think maybe we can finish up on that. What I'm here to encourage people to do is to know that whatever those norms are in the business world that you're in, maybe there's room for you to be out in this blue ocean all by yourself, doing things differently, not being transactional, being relationship focused. Would you say that's a pretty good mentality to have, to try and break free of the norms that are pretty binding and kind of disappointing?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, being from a small town, one quick little side note is that we no longer have any car dealerships in our town of 15,000 people, not a single one. Every single one slowly went out of business. And it was sort of in that time frame, that you would expect it to have 2007, 2008, 2009,
Yes.
2010. But part of that was that people, this is just my opinion, but in our small community, people were starting to go an hour away to the bigger cities, to go to Costco, to go to the big box stores, these locations that weren't small town. And I know there's been a trending movement on Small Business Saturday and purchasing local and, really supporting your small businesses. But I can't stress that enough. I mean, supporting a small business whenever you can do business with somebody that you actually know who you're giving your money to. Now, granted, we're all guilty of buying from Amazon, especially when you live in a town with 15,000 people. I mean, we don't even have places to go. So I'm just as guilty as everybody else for, one click prime 2-day shipping, right? But when you can spend your money with a good quality human, when you can do that, I think it's super important. When you can choose to spend $500 or $1,000 or maybe $2,500 more on a product, when you can do that because you have enough money and you know that the person that was helping you really gave you their heart and soul versus just some guy that, can cut you a smoking deal because they sell so many cars or whatever that they can do that. But the other place is a small hometown dealership. That's really important. And I mean, I'm not saying that every small town home dealership is worthy of your business either, because we've all been to those ones that they just kick their feet up on the desk and they don't really care. So, I mean, we have to know that we're doing business with good humans, right? But I think that's important. And I think supporting your local economy and supporting small businesses, even if it's maybe not your local economy. I am not your local economy. You came out and spent your money in our small local economy on a trailer that is built even within a little bit bigger part of our small local economy. So, I mean, that's also important too. People sometimes think they have to stay just in their hometown. Well, what about the small town that's 45 minutes away from us? I spend a lot of money over in Walla Walla, Washington, because it's all small locally owned businesses. So, I mean, it's not just staying super small within your own little local economy.
Yeah, that's a really great thing to remember, is that when we can, this finding this gratitude economy includes, as close as we can to home in our neighborhoods and our communities,
right?
To keep the things circling there, so so our communities remain strong. Thanks for bringing in that point.
Absolutely.
That's a really, really important one.
Well, it's not any different than, like I said, not haggling in Italy, right? Not haggling with somebody who was selling T-shirts on a street, a street side corner. Like, I'm just not going to do it. Yeah.
I never do it either. I just think, I'm so fortunate to be here.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. I just think of it as, as they're working hard too. And by accident of birth, I'm over there, they're over here.
Exactly.
Share the good fortune that I've had.
And that's not my local economy, but I supported that small local economy, even if it was just that one family.
And isn't that sort of the beautiful message of this whole thing? Is that your local out there in Pendleton, Oregon is the same as my local here in St. Albans, Vermont. And as long as we're supporting each other in this big cycle of energy, that's the gist of the gratitude economy. Well, I can't thank you
Absolutely.
enough, Corinne.
Yes, thank you.
Check out Thompson's RV if you're in that market. I don't do anything to do with advertising ever. In fact, you may be the very first person I've ever interviewed who's a normal business person out in the world. But what
Right.
you're doing is so unique, and I wanted to share it with people who are in the business world, because it is a choice. It is a choice on how we live our daily lives, and it's so much more rewarding and purposeful if you work in this way rather than the transactional way, that I want
Yes.
people to know it is something that's out there. Okay.
Yeah.
Have a great day, everybody. I hope
Thank
Corinne and
you.
I have put a spring in your step. Thank you so much, Corinne.
Thanks.